Hey, gang, thank you all for coming. It was a very strange day, a lot of very strange things happening. And this is going to be a complicated story because I know I was going to call it like, who can we trust? And where does the truth lie, etc. There's weird stuff going on. Something's off. July has been great, but we're heading into August. And what does that mean for the markets? We were supposed to get a huge announcement today. Was it a Nothingburger or not? We'll look at some charts. They look pretty scary, by the way. And we'll try to get to the bottom of exactly where we are because there are records being broken. Then there's also weird stuff going on that impact Bitcoin and the whole space. Should we de-risk before August? We'll try to answer that question today. Thank you all for coming. Thank you to mods in the chat as well. This is not financial advice, just a guy on the internet. And thank you to Patreon that make it possible for me to hire the best team in the world. Thank you. Jason W., I joined your Patreon this year and it's been the best decision I've made. Woohoo! Good stuff. And again, we're heading into the August doldrums. That's always careful time. But there's lots of good news and some weird news. So let's break it all down. Sorry if you can hear that squeaky noise in the background. Stop eating that over there. Somebody on the floor eating something. But let's talk about where we are now so far. This is July. We've made 19% so far in July. And we had a bouncy day too. We fell down over $2,000 at one stage. Bitcoin fell to 115.8, even below that after being 119K because of the Fed and the FOMC. But when we look at this chart, okay, 19% better than the average. Going back in history, we did promise it would be good because history says so for the corresponding years like 2013, 2017, 2021. We beat all of those three historic years that are at the same place in the cycle. That's an extremely strong sign. However, if history repeats, the average gainers for August is minus 0.7%. But if we look at 2021, 13.4%, 2017, 64.2%, and 2013, 32.8%. So it depends. Are we going to track with the stage we are in the bull run or take an average overall? If we track with where we are in the bull run, it's extremely good. Let's look ahead to September as well for 1 second, because that just jumps into my head next. If we look at 2013, September, minus 4.4%, 2017, minus 7.9%, 2021, minus 7%. So Septembers are ugly. August could be amazing. But let's look at the chart next and see exactly what's going on. First of all, two of the models that I look at a lot, the ATR model and the optimized trend, both are saying we are teetering on the brink. That is not good, ladies and gentlemen. That means we could be potentially falling off a cliff. But remember, if a ton of money comes into the space, that denies the TA, as they say. But the TA is not looking good, ladies and gentlemen. But the rest of the year still looks very good because global M2 continues to rise. And that means we're going to follow that too in time. But let's get into a couple more charts, but a little bit of the big risk, the big risk that we are waiting for today. A lot of people were excited and nervous, a lot of trepidation. Bitcoin did brace this morning for a wild ride as the Fed decision and White House Bitcoin report was going to hit today. What was going to happen? Well, we know the Fed wasn't going to cut, pretty clear. But then we were excited by this new SBR report. We'll break all that down as to exactly what happened in a minute, because that ties into other parts of the story. But first, let's look at where we are in terms of this teetering. Are we teetering on the brink? Well, we saw a big dip to 115,784 today. And if we look at this from Axel, the 7-day moving average of takers net position, that's long net of short, has dropped to minus 3.7%. And this means pretty much that an average over the week, the volume of short sales exceeded the volume of longs by 3.7%, and the taker volume flow on the centralized exchanges. What this typically indicates is there is a small risk of a short-term correction. We shall see. Small risk, short-term correction, not a big correction, but the chart does say we're kind of like teetering on the edge before we make a next move. We could also consolidate sideways. We're not sure. August could be great if we follow the pattern, or if it's an average, it'll be sleepy. We shall see. Anyway, either way, The other thing that's going on, and it's part of the actual story today, we still have those fantastic looser financial positions. I will not share another Bitcoin versus M2 chart. I think you're tired of seeing those things, but it does track very well. In fact, Bitcoin is a liquidity sponge, especially when there's chaos around the world. People around the world FOMO into Bitcoin for safety. It's their life raft. But here from Econometrics, we can see here looser financial conditions continue to drive Bitcoin higher. This trend has been in place for the past 3 years. Looser conditions mean more money, more liquidity, more M2, more cash, greater risk appetite, and ultimately more capital flowing into assets like Bitcoin. And today, the financial conditions are the loosest they've been since COVIDians 2022. Am I allowed to say that word now? I hope so. And that is a very strong tailwind for Bitcoin. Remember, Global M2 floats all boats, especially Bitcoin. It just sucks it in. It's a tiny asset compared to the amount of money being printed around the planet. And I will mention Brian Armstrong not once, but twice today, because he had some good stuff to say on an interview with I forget he was interviewing with. Oh, it'll come to me later. Yeah, I'll promise I'll get it. Anyway, a really good interviewer. But Coinbase CEO said it flat out, Bitcoin is probably the best form of money ever created. It's got gold scarcity, but it's even more scarce. He didn't say that. I said that. It's faster. It's cleaner. Elizabeth Warren would argue with that. And built for the digital age. It's portable, divisible, durable, programmable, all the stuff you heard 1,000 times. That's what makes it much better money, or that's what much better money looks like. So Brian is there. And let's talk about, first of all, we have loose financial conditions. We have treasuries buying up a ton of Bitcoin. We have Brian advising the Mag 7, I covered that last week, on how to buy Bitcoin. We have Michael Saylor advising treasuries around the world how to buy Bitcoin. But then we have this, okay? We have today was supposed to be the news about this massive news from the White House about the Bitcoin SBR. And from Justin, hilarious, hapless SBR Maxis and Disbelief. Within 6 months, with not one word on how much the Bitcoin the US stole, no plan, no audit, no budget, no gold audit, no Fort Knox audit, whatever, no strategy to accumulate that's neutral, just headlines, hand waving, and politicians smiling for the cameras. This was brilliant. In government, we do not trust ever. But at the same time, you have to think, all right, if I am the government and I want to build a big bag of 1 million Bitcoin, would I announce it? No. I would like to front run quietly, not tell people what my plan is, especially when, the Chinese are watching, etc. So, but this brings about a question, okay? Something fishy going on in Bitcoin for freedom. Something shady going on with the price. That's the Bitcoin price. All these Bitcoin treasury companies, ETFs, and no price action. Yes, it's true. There is crazy accumulation happening. But at the same time, we're at nearly 120K. So it's not too bad. But let's talk about, is there potential price suppression? I definitely thought there was some funky stuff going on when the ETFs launched. I was analyzing the size of the buys and the lack of price action on the ETFs. So maybe I had a theory there was a transfer going on between Grayscale and BlackRock, just basically moving the bags across the road. Who knows? But here we have another post from Shanaka Anslem Pereira. What you are seeing isn't a price glitch. It's a suppression algorithm, an invisible war between ETF market makers, custodians, and the Fed shadow layer. This isn't no price action. It's full spectrum liquidity lockdown. I thought this was quite profound when I read it. The smart money has already bought. Now they're engineering apathy. No hype, no breakout, no spark. Just deep, quiet absorption. And when the gate opens, Bitcoin will exit gravity. That's the blow off top thing, I imagine, because the price was never the signal. The silence was. Brilliant. The best tweet I've probably read this entire year, unless it came from Elon Musk, of course. Profound, brilliant. And this is exactly what's happening with other tokens out there. Solana, absolutely price suppressed to death. And we know why now. as per Marty on DCA Monday. But let's try balance it and make everything fair and balanced. And let's see where we are. Is there really price suppression happening? Let's look at a couple of on-chain charts. First of all, we just hit another new all-time high realized cap of $1.02 trillion. We just hit $1 trillion a few days ago, and this is yet another new one as well. So that means, wow, people are still buying in. People are still taking profits. This is really a very good sign, a very bullish sign. Also, we have the largest net realized profit ever on record, $3.7 billion over 7-day exponential moving average. And 97% of Bitcoin bag holders are in profit, which is basically at an all-time high. The only time it's at 100% is when we make a new all-time high. So shout out to the 97% out there. And sorry for the 3% that bought above $118,000, because that's what this represents. But the point is, new money is also coming in even above 118K, which is also a very bullish sign. So far, we're doing well, ladies and gentlemen. If you look at my videos back in early 2023, my bull target, or my expected price for Bitcoin, if we were lucky, was 119K. We're there. We're there. So I'm happy. Don't know about you guys. Went from 15.5 to 120K. Not bad. And what's also interesting too is the unrealized profit of all Bitcoin holders hit a new all-time high of 1.4 trillion. That means there are people sitting on bags that they could sell. And if they dumped all their bags today, they'd make $1.4 trillion. That's a lot of cash, ladies and gentlemen. That's a lot of cash. Let's look into this a bit more. This is a paper gain, of course, and it sets the stage for maybe potential future distribution. But remember, much of this is at a very low cost basis. 1.04 million tokens from the Satoshi wallet era is included in this. They're not going to be sold. And there's, as I say, if 5 million Bitcoin are lost, they're not going to be sold. So we'll see where all this goes. But the point is, we're doing very well. Now, getting back to that story of the ETF stacking so much, I thought this was super interesting. Now, I always talk about there never be more than 50 million Bitcoin. People say it was 21 million. Pick whatever number you want. I don't care. I'm just tired of explaining my 15 million number. But this is interesting. This is based on the total supply. The ETFs now hold 6.4% of basically 20 million Bitcoin. Okay. And if the ETFs continue to stack at the rate they've stacked over the last 30 days, they'd be adding another 3.4%. Shout out to Hildobby for this great information. That means basically a big bag of Bitcoin will be held by the ETFs. So add your 6.4 plus 3.4. It's basically 10% of 20 million, which is basically 13.5% of 15 million, which is a lot. These ETFs have been a huge success, and they are not slowing down. Every single day, BlackRock buys more. $250 million, $400 million, $500 million every single day like clockwork, not stopping. That's mad. Now let's get back to the big story. This was exciting. Okay, this is the Bitcoin in-kind benefits. So this, I'll try to talk about this, and I don't know why these legal documents, SEC, look like a piece of paper from 200 years ago, but that's how they are. They haven't even modernized their font. Anyhow, the SEC just granted accelerated approval for allowing in-kind creations and redemptions for Bitcoin ETFs. This means participants can now deliver or receive actual Bitcoin instead of cash when creating or redeeming ETF shares. And this is the same as commodities like gold. Although I can't imagine somebody selling a gold ETF and then or wanting to pull out their gold ETF in the form of gold and just handing over a gold bar. Anyway, apparently it does happen. Can't imagine it somehow. It just seems too complex. But this is standard practice for commodities, and Bitcoin is a commodity. And the great news as well is in-kind settlements reduce trading costs, improve tax efficiency, which reduce trading costs. You don't have to swap your Bitcoin into cash and then move it into something else. Just go Bitcoin to Bitcoin. Tax efficiency, it's not a tax event. Still have to hear from the IRS on that one. And it'll enable much tighter price tracking by minimizing slippage. So this is just absolutely wonderful news for people out there too. Again, taxes are a pain. If you can minimize your taxes, you save a lot of money. Now, Another crazy news. If it couldn't get better, Coinbase is planning a deal with Chase. Coinbase Chase, that rhymes. JP Morgan Chase, to ink a deal to link user bank accounts and crypto accounts together. Okay. Direct bank to wallet connection, which is an easier on-ramp for fiat. Many banks around the world have been shutting off the rail for people to move their fiat in their personal bank account to a crypto exchange. That could be done with from the perspective of Chase. And customers will be able to move their Chase rewards, even from credit cards, to a Coinbase account and use Chase cards to fund balances, buying Bitcoin, who knows, even buying Coinbase for the first time. And that's crazy. But the crazier thing about this too, which I find, isn't it ironic? Sounds like a song. Who can you trust? Because that's a big part of the story today is who can you trust? And that was going to be the name of this video. But anyway, I didn't change that because that sounds a bit frightening and I don't like to use scare tactics. But in 2023, JP Morgan Chase, Jamie Dimon, CEO, said he's deeply opposed to Bitcoin and it's for criminals. Today, JP Morgan partnered with Coinbase to accelerate crypto adoption. You cannot make this stuff up, ladies and gentlemen. It is truly bonkers. It's a wild world and we're very grateful to be in it. By the way, thank you, Sean D, T&D, and everybody else. And a shout out to Zeno and Forrest, my friends. Thank you so much. Let's get into who can we trust as well. We always know the psyops that exist out there on the world. There are people that like to spread disinformation, misinformation, whatever you want to call it, fake news, to manipulate the markets so they can do better. Okay? But this is even crazier. GDP growth is apparently back. Yes, it's complicated. Yes, there are tariffs involved. Yes, there's been a slash in government spending, but this took everybody by surprise. In April 8th, everybody thought the world was going to end and we're heading into the worst recession since the 80s. But nope. The US economy returned to growth last quarter, GDP increasing at 3% annualized rate due to trade swings, which means there was a lot more trade that benefited the US than other places. But that's the bottom title from the Wall Street Journal. The top one from the New York Times, if I got that logo correct, has repeatedly published misinformation. And I believe there ought to be some type of accountability for this. But they say U.S. economic growth softened in the first half of the year as tariffs weighed on consumers and businesses. That is not true. Now, I know that tariffs do make certain things hard for certain companies. If you're a car maker like Ford or GM, and you make cars in Mexico or you get parts from other parts of the world, yes, they're going to hurt. Or, I don't know, if you procure something from Brazil or anywhere else and there's tariffs, that's going to hurt. But remember, this is a negotiation tactic that hopefully will make things fairer. Global trade. The more global trade there is, the better off we all are. The more controlled and manipulated, the more governments are involved in trade, the worse things are. And that's the big point here. Now, related to who can you trust? Again, Brian Armstrong, I did say he'd be back. Wow, this was crazy. It was Sean Ryan is the interview where this thing happened. And wow, did Brian Armstrong unleash? And yes, I've never been a friend of Elizabeth Warren. I don't like what she does. I don't even know why she's in power because she does nothing to help the country. Nothing except special interests, which is very sad. But Brian Armstrong, he unleashed. He said Warren had a deal with Gensler, and Gensler allegedly accepted the SEC chair role with a promise from Warren to support his ambition to become Treasury Secretary, like Jerome Powell, who we just mentioned before, if he aggressively targeted crypto and took it down. And we have all the clips of these two side by side, Gensler and Warren, backroom negotiations and stuff. But there was more in that Sean Ryan clip video from Brian Armstrong. But boy, was it incredible. And even weirder, this is a complex video today because it touches on so much stuff. And it all goes back to who can you trust and where does the truth lie and who should we listen to and everything else. And I believe truth is critical in the world. But I've never heard CNBS slay Warren so hard. That's Joe Kernan on the top. I don't know who the other guy is. I forget. But anyway, CNBC is currently mocking the poop out of Democrats and Elizabeth Warren after the latest inflation and strong GDP report. The left The people who don't like the president don't want things to work. Senator Warren will come and say inflation is out of control, yada, yada. These two went on a rampage, and I thought that was very unusual for them to do that. Anyway, interesting. Maybe CNBS is becoming CNBC again. I'm not sure. We shall see. And another big driver of Bitcoin adoption around the world, which is bad news, yet good news. Good news is bad news when it comes to Bitcoin, and Bitcoin loves the crisis. And people need Bitcoin, especially in these type of regimes as well. Algeria bans all Bitcoin and crypto activity nationwide to curb money laundering. Yeah, like curb money laundering, like stop global warming by stopping Bitcoin mining. We've heard all this before. It's just asinine at this stage. Curb money laundering and imposing up to 1 year jail and 1 million dinar fines, which is about $7,000. When this happens, we saw this in Nigeria and many other countries. When you ban something, you know what happens? You make everybody want to get it. The black market is going to go nuts in Algeria. Shout out to anybody in Algeria watching. Get some, figure out a way, and be safe, of course. You don't want to get that fine or a year in jail, but taking Bitcoin away from people is just bad. And that's what she tried to do. Bad. Don't like it. Okay. And meme du jour, which is hilarious, and I laughed out so hard. Shout out to Mr. 2J. Impact of the White House digital asset report before and after. Classic Nothingburger. They were just repeating old lines from 6 months ago. Very sad to see. But then again, you know, let's hope they're just keeping under wraps what they're trying to do. You don't want to announce to the world and trigger game theory that you're going to build a million Bitcoin bag. So hopefully that's the case. Or probably not. I'm not sure. We'll find out. Anyway, Bitcoin Only playlist is up here. For those who just like fun Bitcoin content, I apologize for this one being a bit spicy. But remember, everybody's out there to lie to you all the time. Check your sources. Be very careful. All right? Have a great day, everybody. Tomorrow's Thursday. Hump day. And Joe B's daycare. Thank you so much, buddy, to crack me up. Thank you all for coming. Thank you to the mods in the chat. All be safe out there, everybody. And yes, it was a big Nothingburger day, but we'll get through it. And Bitcoin hopefully will rebound. The chart is looking ugly, but we are back. We've recovered. We've recovered $2,500. No, $1,500 from the bottom. Not bad. We'll take that. Have a good night, everybody. Bye-bye.